Welcome back to the Football Betting Tips and Strategies series. It's been a while, but we're back. We're in my kitchen. Today we're going to be looking at specialising in the lower leagues and moving away from the major European leagues. The sports betting industry is worth anywhere between 435 billion and 625 billion pounds, with up to 70% of that focused solely on football betting. Within that number, a large proportion of bets is staked in the major European leagues, with ease of accessibility and popularity driving bettors to place stakes in these markets. And I'll admit, even I will sometimes place a bet in the major European leagues if I'm going to be watching a particular game to feel more invested in that game. But if we're talking about making a long-term, profitable strategy from football betting, you cannot get sucked into the bookmaker's game. So much money directed towards the major European leagues, it is extremely difficult to get an edge over the bookmakers. These companies have entire teams dedicated to researching leagues and sometimes even focused on particular clubs themselves. In some cases, they may even have insiders at the clubs who can give them information to let them know when star players are injured before anyone else knows, so that the odds reflecting that the star player is going to be missing for the upcoming game are already reflected. And by the time you get the information, you can't make any use of it. Now, I'm not saying don't bet on the major European leagues. I understand it's fun and I do it myself. But all you have to do is look at the odds for any weekend in the Premier League of the season just gone by, and you can see that it's just not worth taking the risk. So let's take a look. So what I've done here is taken all the data from the season just gone by in the English Premier League, the 2020-2021 season, and you'll see I have collected the average odds to win for each team across the season, then converted that number into an implied win percentage based on the average odds over the season, and then compared that against how many home games they actually won as a percentage of the total number of home games they played. So in this first diagram, we're going to be focusing on the teams down the left where they were the home team, and for this particular scenario we're looking at excluding the big six, because what you'll see is that in a lot of the times when a team plays the big six, the odds will be kind of distorted because of the fact that they're playing a superior team. And really what I'm trying to get at here and point at is the scenarios where a big team are playing a smaller team or a relatively smaller team, and show how the odds are just not worth the percentage. So here, if we look at a couple of the big teams that we've highlighted, you have got Liverpool there. So the odds are calculating the average odds for all their home games against opposition who were not part of the big six. And you'll see there that the odds are 1.34. So on average, when Liverpool are not playing a big team, the odds for them to win at home will be 1.34. And that converts to an implied win percentage of 74.7%. How many home games did they actually win? Well, only 57.1% of their games against teams not in the big six. And I've sorted the list there in terms of kind of the worst comparisons against what the odds are expecting and what actually happened. And looking down the list there, you'll see that Liverpool and Arsenal, who we're going for kind of classical big six there, are really doing poorly against their variance. Other big teams there include Manchester City and Chelsea, who are kind of just below the expectation, but still over the course of the season, if you were to place money on these teams, you would be losing out money. Conversely, where you should be looking, and appreciate that the video is in fact talking about staying away from the bigger leagues, but to kind of provide more insight, you should be looking at teams like West Ham, Newcastle and Southampton, whose implied win percentage, and remember this excludes the big six where their odds would have been even higher, the odds for them to win
over the course of the season against non-Big Six teams are, there you see, 2.37, 3.16 and 2.16 for those three teams, giving those implied win percentages. And in fact, they won many more home games than the implied win percentage from the bookmakers' odds would have you believe. And so if you are going to be focusing on the major European leagues, then it is advisable, as I've said in other videos, for you to avoid kind of the favorites and the big teams and really look for those kind of middle of the pack teams who are probably overperforming in the season. Right, and so that first picture we were looking at when teams are playing at home. Now let's look at when the teams are away. And again, excluding the Big Six in this particular example, and you see a much more kind of stark picture and much more gloomy picture for us bettors. And again, now even more prominent are those big teams at the top, where the odds that they give you to win really aren't so good. 1.53 over the course of the season for Liverpool, 1.81 for Manchester United, when in fact, look how many games they're actually winning away. I appreciate Liverpool had a particularly bad season, but even Chelsea, who had a good season, the number of games they won away, excluding the Big Six, was 6 of 14 games, and they've only given you odds of 1.63 over the course of the season. So again, if there's anything to see here, it's especially when a big team is playing away and you get those kind of poor odds below 1.8, 1.7, it's highly advisable that you stay away from them because they really don't offer you the value. Looking towards the other end of the table, I mean, Arsenal have crept into there. I think they got given generous odds, but also Crystal Palace, Brighton and Aston Villa. Again, it's a case-by-case basis where you think where the kind of variables for a game line up well and you've got a kind of middle of the pack away team offering good odds, then it's highly advisable that you back them. Okay, and for those of you who are saying, why are you excluding the Big Six? You've got to include them to have the full picture, even though I kind of gave my reasoning for not including them. Here, I've taken the average odds to win of the home team, including the Big Six. So home games played 19, and we look at the average odds to win again, the implied win percentage, and how many home games they actually won last season. And looking down the list, again, you'll have your bad teams like Fulham and Brighton. Despite having such high odds, they won so few home games that it just isn't worth betting on them. But then the big teams creep up again in terms of poor value for money in terms of your bet. Liverpool, average odds of 1.55, Chelsea 1.7 and Man City 1.3, giving implied win percentages which are higher than the actual amount of home games that they did win. On the other hand, looking again towards the bottom of the table, reiterating the point for the third time, are those teams who are kind of not expected to do so well, but outperform the average or the expectation of the bookmakers over the course of the season. So West Ham with 10 home games won, we know they had a very strong season and they pushed for Champions League pretty much for the whole season. But also Newcastle, Southampton, when you find those games, look at the average odds being offered there. When you find games where the kind of analysis that you've done supports them winning, then you should be backing those kind of teams. And then lastly, we do the same again, but this time displaying the teams when they played as the away team. And no surprise, Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City, Chelsea, all towards the top of the list in terms of bad value for money. I don't know if I can highlight the point anymore, but looking at all four scenarios, it's just proven that when you're drawn to those major European leagues and you're betting on the favourites in particular, you're guaranteed to lose money over time. And just quickly, I'll leave this here. You can pause just to review this table, which is just an average of those four tables I'd shown previously. And again, reinforcing the point to stay away from the big teams in the major European leagues.
So, even though it may not be particularly exciting, or your knowledge on the lower leagues may not be as strong as the major European leagues, if you can pick out a couple of the lower leagues and really invest the time to understand the dynamics, the teams and the rules of those leagues, you'll provide yourself with a much stronger advantage, not only over other bettors, but over the bookmakers themselves, who simply just don't invest the same amount of time into it because it's not where they make their money. In the upcoming weeks, I'll look to start uploading a separate league overview, providing you with key statistics and metrics of lesser known leagues so that you can decide for yourself which league you want to invest in further time ahead of the upcoming season. Also, in terms of making a return year round, you really want to pick up a couple of these leagues which run over the summer. Most of the leagues run over from September or August up until about May, and that leaves a good few months in the middle of the year where we're not having the chance to generate any sort of return. So, with this league series that I'm about to drop, it'll give you some more information and you can pick out which league is best for you. A short video today, but hopefully that's helpful and something to whet the appetite ahead of the start of the new season. Comment below if there's anything that you would like me to cover in particular, but until then, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and remember to bet smart.